Hey guys, welcome to Unit 7, Lesson 10. Our topic today is the phase shift and practice graphing. I also made up a separate video about graphing. I would highly recommend you do watch that after you're done with this page so you understand the graphing better. On the set of axes below, graph y equals sine x. I already wrote the pattern for sine graph. It is starts at mid, goes to max, mid, min, mid. So I want to change my radians to degrees. If you like working in radians, go for it, guys. But I highly recommend changing it because it makes it easier and you get used to converting them back and forth. And now I'm going to graph it. So it starts at mid. I know my max for my sine function is 1. My min is -1, right? Because my amplitude is just 1. So I'm going to go mid, max, mid, min, mid. So that is one complete cycle of a sine graph, right? And you can keep going in the other direction. I change the order. I go now min, mid, max, mid instead of the other way, right? If you're going backwards, I can have arrows going down and going up. Now it's saying on the same set of axes, graph y equals sine x after a horizontal shift to the left pi over 2. Pi over 2 is same thing as 90 degrees, so I'm going to shift everything 90 degrees. So I'm going to literally take my points and shift them 90 degrees. So I'm going to just work in this part of my graph first, and then you will see what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to take this point, that's my mid, I'm going to shift it 90, it would be here. Take this point which was max at 91, I'm going to shift it 90, and I'm going to do the same thing for all of them. And this would be here, right? And if I was to sketch it, do you see a pattern? And since it's mid, the next would be here. And I'm going to reverse the order, and I'm gonna, so this actually, if you realize it, if you only look at this part of it, this is what? The blue graph is a cosine graph, right? Because it's starting at max. So basically a cosine graph is a shift to the left 90 units of the sine graph. And I can have my arrows in here. Remember, you're not going to put them up. Don't put them up like this. That'll be wrong, okay? So just telling you why would it be wrong? Because your maximum for sine and cosine for a generic one is from 1 to -1 or -1 to 1. That's your range. Okay, so let's keep going. So which of the following would represent the function of this newly shifted graph? Since we moved our x's, we're shifting to it's a horizontal shift, right? So we did pi over 2 to the left. Remember the horizontal shift, going back to when we did our quadratics, it's always opposite sign. So if you're moving to the left, it's going to be plus pi over 2. Okay, horizontal shift and phase shift, they're very similar in or same in math. For the sinusoidal equation y equals a sine bx minus c plus d, the horizontal shift is obtained by examining c. If the horizontal shift is positive, we're moving to the left. That's why we did positive pi over 2 here. If the horizontal shift is negative, the shifting moves right. And the horizontal shift may also be referred to as a phase shift. Example 1. So it says, relative to the graph of y equals 3 sine x, what is the shift of the graph of y equals 3 sine x plus pi over 3? Okay, so you have to pay attention to it that the x is being changed. Okay, as if I add or subtract a number from x, then it's a horizontal shift. But if I add or subtract a number to the whole function, then it's a vertical shift. Here the x is being altered, so by pi over 3 units. So automatically, oh, these are all pi of 3. So now I need to decide whether it's up, down, right, left. Since x is altered, so it has to be what? It has to be either right or left. It cannot be up and down. So we have choices 1 and 2 left, and since it's plus, it's always the opposite. Horizontal shift is opposite, so it's choice 2. So the video that was posted about all the information of how to find your A, B, C, D, please have those notes in front of you when you're doing these questions. And if you have any questions, you must reach out to your teachers, please. So here it's asking us to graph a cosine function. So the first thing I'm going to do is cosine function starts at max. I know that starts at max. Then, and with an amplitude of 3. I know my amplitude is 3. It's an absolute value of 3. My period is pi over 2. I'm going to convert it into degrees, which is 90 degrees. Substitute pi with 180. 180 divided by 2 is 90. Your midline, I'm just going to give some space. And I'm going to say midline is y equals negative 1. So midline is basically a letter D. So we should know that. Right? And now what else do I need? I want to graph it from negative 2 pi to 2 pi, means negative 360 to 360. Few radians you should know them by heart, like pi is 180, 2 pi is 360, pi over 2 is 90, and 3 pi over 2 is 270. So it will be easier every time, otherwise you're doing the conversions. If you are confused, just multiply by 180 over pi, or substitute pi with 180, which is what we did to find the p. Okay, so I want to graph it. So here, I know my p, I need my increments. I can find my b also. I need b to write the equation, but I need p to graph it. So increments are your period divided by 4, which is 90 divided by 4, which is 22.5 degrees. So how do you start graphing? You always start with the midline. Initially our midlines were x-axis, so it really didn't matter. We always did the amplitude and went on. Here our midline is y equals negative 1. So I am going to put a dotted line there. And if you have a colored pencil, that'll be very good. Y equals negative 1. Right? Y equals are all horizontal lines. Then it's saying the amplitude is 3 above and below. You cannot, if I did this, 3, 1, 2, 3, there's 3 here, and 1, 2, 3. I'll be wrong. This is wrong amplitude. Why? Because you go 3 above and below the midline. Go, let's write that down. Go above, 3 above and below the midline. So please know that. Okay, so I'm going to go 3 above, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. 3 below. What number is that? When you're counting it, this is 2, and this is what? Negative 4. Right? You see it's not even, but if you look at the midline, the pink line, it's equal amount is above the midline and equal amount is below the midline. Okay, so now it is I need to do my period. First of all, let's do 360. So I'm going to go by 2's, and that's my period. 90, 180, 270, and 360. And I have to do the same. I want to go in the opposite direction also. Negative 90, negative 180 degrees, negative 270 degrees, and negative 360 degrees. Sorry about that. So now this is a cosine graph. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sketching it, right? And remember, I'm going to highlight actually my first cycle. 90 is my period. So my one cycle has to be 90 degrees long. So I'm going to do max. That's the pattern, right? I need 4 increments here. So if you want to do 4 increments, that'll help you. Mid, min, mid, max. So that is your one cycle. in 90 degrees. And I'm going to continue that. I'm going to do different colors so you see that. I'm going to do the 4 increments so it makes sense to you. Alright, and that's the pattern. Let's do green, blue, green. Again, for 1 each, I divided those. So, one cycle is 90 seconds long, and that is the reason why it is like that. And I did the max and min. I'm not going to put arrows because it said from negative 360 to 360. And now when I'm going in the opposite direction, I'm going to reverse my order. Right? So there you go. You can start all the way at 360. I messed up there. My minimum was at negative 4. I couldn't see this. That's what happens. So you have to be careful. So that's one. Then again, if I was at max, I'm going to go mid, min, mid, max. And that gives me my one cycle. Please don't make them V's. Then I'm at max. I'm going to go mid, min. That's how your cosine cycle works. And sketch it. Max, mid, min, mid, max. So if you look at from 0 to 360, which is this part here, and above the axis is 1 and 2. If you want to go by halves, you can do so, and if you want to write the numbers, that kind of might help you. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. And these will be my halves in here. So it's easier for us to count, if that helps. So now, if I did not know my formula, how would I find out where my max and min would be, right? First, start with your midline. Your midline is at negative 1.5, which is right here. Y equals negative 1.5. Now you're going to go up to below 2. So if I go up 2, I'm going to count by halves. So I'm going to go 4 halves. 1, 2, 3, 4, which is 0.5, right? So that's going to be your maximum. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is negative 3.5, which is your minimum. So your graph's going to go up and below. Now you want to do your increments, right? So let's say this is, I'm just going to erase this, y equals here. We already know, we labeled the axis. This is 360 degrees. So my increments are going by 4, so I'm going to divide it into 4. So I like to do the half, and then this half, and this half. So this would go by 90, 180, 270, and 360. So that would be a sine graph, right? So let's do the sine. It starts at midline, then the maximum, mid, approximate 3.5 min, and this is what, a one cycle of a sine graph. I need 2. So how about I go in the opposite direction? I could have gone all the way to the right to 720, but since we don't have room here, I would go in the opposite direction. Either or would be correct. And I'm going to say this is negative 360, and I'm going to divide it into 4 equal halves, and that would be negative 270, negative 180 degrees, and negative 90 degrees. But when I'm going the other way, I'm going to switch the order. So I'm going to go mid, min, max, mid. So this is what my graph will look like. So I have 2 cycles of the same function. So I know the equation's not asking, but I'm going to write the equation. It's y equals, what's my a? My a is 2. It's a sine graph. Sine. What's my b? My b is, I didn't find a b, so let's find b. Or think about it. Just looking at it, from 0 to 360, how many cycles did you fit in? 1 cycle. So b must be 1. Let's check. Your period is 360, so your b will be what? your 2 pi or 360 divided by period. So I'm going to do 360 divided by period, which is 360, which is just 1. Did I just not predict it was 1, right? So 1x, and my midline was what? Negative. You can choose to write negative 3 over 2 or 1.5, either or is correct. Okay, example 3. Now here the equations given to you, I already wrote out what we need to find, and we're going to find all this and graph it. So compare it. First of all, this negative means something else. We'll talk about it in a minute. My amplitude is absolute value of negative 4, which would be just 4. My b is the coefficient of x, which is 2. How many cycles in 360 degrees? 2. My period is 360 divided by 2, 180. So you have one cycle completing in 180. My increments are period divided by 4. So 180 divided by 4, which is 45 degrees. And my midline is my d, which is y equals 1. My max is going to be my d plus the amplitude. So my d is 1 plus 4 is 5. D minus the amplitude, which is 1. It'll be the same numbers, but positive and negative, which is negative 3. Okay, let's start this. So this was very straightforward. I just went through it because we've done it in the last question too. So y equals 1. Y equals 1 is this line here, horizontal line. Again, if I didn't know my max and min, I could have used the midline to find it. My max is above 4 from the midline. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Isn't that number 5? If I count from the axis, you count always from the axis, right? To find out what number that is. To see where the amplitude would be, always you start with the midline. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That is negative 3, and that confirms us that our max and mins are right. Now what you do is you do your increments. So I'm going to go by 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 180. Right? And then another 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It said one cycle. Oh, it said one cycle. So we're just going to do one cycle. So till 180. You could have stretched it also, but I'm just going to do that. So your sine, it's a cosine graph. It starts at max. But here, be careful. There's a negative, means it's what? Reflection over the x-axis. The negative tells you reflection over the x-axis. So what does that do? That will actually make me not start at the max, but it'll make me start at the minimum. So I'm going to be starting at the minimum. Then I'm going to go to my midline, then max, then mid, and then minimum. So it's like an inverted cup. So that's one cycle of a cosine graph. Okay. So the next one, it says on the set of axes below, sketch at least one cycle of this equation. So it's 3 is what? Your A, your amplitude, absolute value of 3, which is just 3. Your B is half, means what? You have half a cycle in 360 degrees. So 1/2. Period is what? 360 divided by a half, which is same thing as dividing by half, same thing as multiplying by it. To keep change switch, and we get 720 degrees. So my increments are going to go by 720, which is my period, divided by 4, which is what? 180 degrees. And my midline is y equals negative 2. My minimum is my d minus my, so my d is negative 2 minus my amplitude, which is negative 5. And max is negative 2 plus 3, which is 1. So there you go. We have all the information we need to graph this. So again, start with the midline. Where is the midline? Y equals negative 2. That's y equals negative 2. And it's saying at least one cycle. So we have to just do one cycle. And what do? B is 1/2. Do I need my B? No. You can go in order. Then I need my period. My period is 720 degrees, right? So either I can do 720 here. Let's see how many boxes left. Let's go by twos. 1, 2, 2, 2. Right, so this is 720 because we scaled it that way, right? So now it's telling me my increments are going by 180. So that would be 180. This would be 360. You're just adding 180. 540 and 720. And my max and min, I didn't do those. Okay, my amplitude is 3. So from my midline, I'm going to go up 3, which is here, below 3, which is here. What are these actual numbers if I count from the axis? This is 1, and that is -5. So we are right here when we found our maxes and mins. And now all I need to do is one cycle of this function, right? So I'm going to do it in red, and it's a sine graph, so I'm going to start at midline. And I'm going to go maximum because there's no negative. If there was a negative in front, you would have gone minimum. Max, mid. It's at least one cycle. So you're not stopping at 360 because we didn't finish one cycle. We found out that our one period is 720 degrees, which is longer than a bigger number than 360 degrees. So that is your one cycle. Okay? So you can scale it as you want as long as you have the right thing. I could have sketched it on the other side also, but then my pattern would have been backwards. Now it says explain any differences between a sketch of 3 sine 1/2 x minus pi over 2 minus 2 and the graph in part A. So I'm going to write the other equation right underneath it. So the only difference is what? This. What did we say? When we alter the axis, it is a horizontal shift, and if it's negative, so it's going what? The graph is shifting to the negative is always opposite to the right pi over 2 units, which is actually 90 degrees, right? So please be very careful that you mark up your midline, your max, your min in each question, your increments. As long as you write the period, how long it is for, you're good. Sometimes, like as you saw in, I think, the first question that we did over here, it is very hard to write all the periods. It would have been crammed up. But it's good to write the period. And if all this work is done, you will have a very easy time graphing your trig functions. Otherwise, they can be challenging. Anyways, finish up the remaining lesson and reach out to your teachers if you have any questions. You just have, I think, 4 questions left. So good luck, guys.